Nice to see everyone. Nice to see everyone who's out there in the audience. We'll be officially starting the States of Mind event, a virtual event that we've called Inside the Male Identity Crisis. So maybe just a quick hello to our three speakers and my colleague Tanya. We've got George Bell. George, say what's
Hello.
up.
Really good to be here today.
Yeah, maybe a quick introduction to who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I've worked in the mental health space for about 10 years, and I've written a book on masculinity coming out in January. So yeah, this topic, masculinity topic, is my real passion at the moment, and that's why I'm here today.
Excellent. All right, Daniel.
Hello, yeah. So I'm Dan Glide. I'm a peak performance coach, and I run an online men's community called Positive Masculinity. We have a private WhatsApp group around an online mastermind, and I work one-on-one with men and have been doing for the last 3 years. And like the same as George, this is my passion now. It feels like my life's work because I've been through some stuff, and you're going to hear about that. And I found a way out, and that's what I'm helping men do.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for being here. And Christian, nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, my name is Christian, based in the UK. So I work as a psychotherapist, and I've also been running men's retreats for the past 3 years. So I work a lot with issues around trauma, addiction, sex and sexuality, and lots of stuff around identity and purpose as well. And just like the other two guys, I had a big point in my life of catalyst and change back in 2019. And that's what really started my own personal development, looking at my own masculinity and helping men with theirs as well.
Welcome, everyone, to the States of Mind's virtual events inside the male identity crisis. So today we're going to be opening up and try to have an honest and necessary conversation about men's mental health. The goal of this event is simple: to slow down and take a moment and create some space for a deeper and more meaningful dialogue. You'll be hearing from experts and advocates who will share their insights on where mental health stands today, how we can foster healthier discussions, and what tools men need to move forward in a more empowered and holistic way, in a healthier way, hopefully. So we have three excellent speakers, as you've just seen. Each brings a unique perspective. And but I'd like to mention that this isn't just a series of presentations, although there will be that, but it's also meant to be an interactive experience. You know, part of the challenge around mental health is that we often hear what we're supposed to do, and we're kind of told to do this or think that. But real change happens when people are given the space to speak for themselves and express themselves and put these things into action and open up. So throughout the events, we invite you to join the conversation. Please share your thoughts in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and you'll have a chance to ask questions to the speakers, or just express yourself and share. And as we close the event, we'll kind of have a fireside chat, a little men's circle where the speakers can share maybe a bit more personally, and people from the audience are welcome to share as well. So, and one final note, that at the end of the event, there'll be some special giveaways. We have a partnership with Go Microdose, which is Europe's leading home microdosing kit. Home's microdosing of psilocybin, which could be a useful tool on people's mental health journeys. So we'll be giving a few of those away at the end of the event for people who have engaged and interacted. So stay involved, participate, and enjoy. And we'll start with George Bell, our first speaker.
Nice. Thanks, Jason. All good to go? Can you hear me all right?
I got you.
I might have to stick around to the end for one of those gifts myself. Sounds pretty good, that. Yeah. Hey everyone. It's really, really good to be here today and to be having this conversation. Obviously, very, very timely on International Men's Day, and I really, really believe that we need to be having more conversations like this. And November estimates that on average, a man takes his own life every single minute of every single day somewhere around the globe. And, it's just, I feel really strongly that it's a global scandal, really, that we've got to that point. And that's why these conversations are more important than ever. So, yeah, really, really glad that we're here today. And by way of introduction, as I already said, my name's George. I've written a book on masculinity coming out in January called Be a Man About It. And the reason that I've written that book, and the reason I'm here today, is because about 10 years ago, it's just under 10 years ago, I was almost one of those Movember statistics. I was basically making plans to take my own life. I was pretty far down the journey with making those plans, and friends, family, loved ones were around me talking about their own plans for the year ahead. And I'd just be sat there thinking to myself, sounds great, but I'm not going to be here to see them. Which, I think as I say that, it feels heavy, and it feels heartbreaking that I was in that place. And clearly there was a huge mental health part of that story. I was struggling with depression and anxiety, and that was part of it, and that was something I had to work on. But the part that I want to focus on today is the masculinity part, and how that contributed and how it got me to that place. Because everything I was feeling, the pain, the struggle, the suicidal thoughts, nobody around me knew. I didn't tell a single person. I had a girlfriend at the time, I had some great mates who I'm still friends with, had a loving family around me, had a really good network, but I told nobody what was going on. Literally nobody had any inkling of what was happening, and I gave nobody the chance to help me. Why did I do that? Because men don't talk, right? That's what we've been told. We've been told that talking about struggle is a weakness. And so that's what I told myself. And, I was basically, I was at the point where I was essentially sort of willing to trade my own life in order to preserve this sort of notion of masculine pride. But, as I look back now, for who was I doing that for? And to achieve what? Like, if I had taken my own life, I wouldn't have scored any extra masculinity points for not talking about it. So it just feels really, really crazy to me when I look back at that time. But, I know when I was in that time, it was just a complete non-starter for me that I was going to talk. I was just never going to open up. It just never crossed my mind. I wasn't sort of asking myself, should I talk? Should I not? I wasn't kind of doing like a flow chart of talking of, the pros and cons. I just never even entertained the idea of opening up to anyone, because it was so deeply ingrained in me that as a man, we do not talk about this stuff. It was deeply ingrained in me because of the culture that I had grown up in for decades, and as will be the case, I think, with others on this call, they'll probably relate to it. That was a culture of emotional suppression rather than expression. And these were the kind of lessons that I was getting from parents and teachers, teasing on the playground, the male action heroes that we saw in films. It all reinforced this belief, a faulty belief, that men don't talk. And I'm not saying that, people were deliberately giving me malicious life lessons. My parents weren't giving me kind of bad life lessons deliberately. That was just the culture that we were used to. That is what men did and do. And so that's what I was brought up in. For me, what happened is that eventually my girlfriend at the time called me out for abnormal behavior. She said something like, "You're really cold sometimes." And that's not in my character. I sort of pride myself on, or at least trying to be a warm human being. So I think when she said that, it was like a real slap to the face. I think I felt like I'd been kind of hiding the stuff that was going on and wearing that mask really, really well. When I was out, I felt like I was being upbeat and jovial and keeping the two lives almost separate. Her comment, made it clear that I wasn't. And it was almost like it just kind of poured out on me then. I just sort of opened up. It wasn't very articulate. I just sort of said something like, something's not right with me, or I feel weird, or my brain feels weird. That was kind of the extent of my vocabulary around mental health at the time. But the important thing is that it started the conversation. She then knew. She got my mum involved. they both got me into medical pathways and therapy and all the rest of it. And, clearly I'm still here today, 10 years on, and thankfully, that was the help I needed, and it got me better. But, it was a journey. And I think to get to this place that I've got to today, I obviously had to work on that mental health side of stuff that I talked about, the depression and the anxiety. But I also had to pretty much entirely deconstruct and then reconstruct what masculinity meant to me and what it means to me and what being a man means. As I said, I kind of grew up with those lessons of emotional suppression rather than expression. I believe that's what made you a man and what masculinity was about. So for me, as I said, I just believe that we don't talk about the things, or I used to believe that we don't talk about the things that are happening to us, particularly the negative stuff. There's a good comedy sketch I saw from a comedian, Bill Burr, who in a stand-up routine, he said that men are allowed to be one of two things. He said that men can be mad or they can be fine. So we can be angry or we can just be fine. And that's kind of been the truth that I've been used to. And I know a lot of men are used to, that those are almost the only two emotions that men are allowed to have access to. And those are the only two emotions that many men think they have. They don't think they have anything else. So I had to relearn for me that is false. I had to relearn lessons from the playground and from parents, from teachers and from popular media. And like I said, it was a real journey and there was a lot of lessons involved. But I think for me, some of the core ones were that I had to learn about my emotions. I had to really, really learn about them. I had to learn that, emotions aren't good or bad. I used to think that they were good or bad, but, we as humans have unhelpfully labeled them that way. They're not good or bad. They're just sources of information from our bodies. It's a way of our body trying to tell us something. And ignoring these emotions, ignoring these life experiences, it doesn't make them go away. It just makes them build like a pressure cooker inside of us. And that pressure has to release eventually. It has to come out somewhere. And for me, that almost came out in suicide. So I had to learn that every single emotion that I feel, I'm allowed to feel that, and it has its place. It's where Bill Burr said men can only be mad or fine. Men have so many more emotions than that. So many, too many to count probably. And, I had to learn about them and that I was allowed to feel them. And then I had to learn how to express myself better, particularly emotionally. As I said, when I first kind of started on this mental health journey, working on myself, my vocabulary was, I don't feel right or I feel weird. That was the extent of it. But I had to learn to, once I understood my emotions, to learn how to express them and how to articulate them, to articulate the things I was feeling, and particularly that I was allowed to articulate them, that, I had a right to do that. It didn't make me any less of a man for doing that. And I think, part of the other lesson I had to learn with that is that the world wasn't going to end when I opened up. I wasn't going to be, shunned by my friends and my family and shipped off somewhere. I think that these are the sort of stories we can tell ourselves as men, that if we open up, everything around us is going to collapse. But that didn't happen. When I first opened up to my girlfriend and my family, and I started to tell friends, they were all there for me. And so I had to learn that the network I'd built around me, it was there for a reason, and it was there for me to lean on. And then I think, really this whole thing, as I said, I had to basically build a new sense of masculinity and what masculinity means to me. I think that I've gone through different phases with this over time. I think I sort of really rejected the version of masculinity that I grew up with, and I went the other way, and I almost tried to, undertake every sort of fad and, become like enlightened and super zen and all of this. And then I think I realized that was just going to another extreme. And so the place I've arrived at now is that I think that we make everything a bit of a battle, or can make everything a bit of a battle these days, and we approach stuff with a real sort of us versus them mindset. It's sort of become traditional masculinity versus this new wave of masculinity. One side gets labeled toxic, the other side gets labeled soft. But really, I think what I've learned for myself is that masculinity is about finding balance between the two and finding balance in the middle somewhere. I think that many of the traits that get associated with traditional masculinity, things like strength, resilience, leadership, providing, these can be and are valuable qualities that many men aspire to have. So this debate shouldn't be about shutting that down, but equally some of the stuff from this new wave, I say new wave because really this stuff has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, but we're sort of labeling things like compassion and empathy and vulnerability as the new wave. But these have power too, and both sides are going to be needed plenty of times throughout life. So yeah, I learned that this isn't about shutting one side down, but finding balance between the two and really expanding the definition of what it means to be a man. So yeah, I sort of built myself a bigger box to live in and to operate within, rather than the very tiny, narrow one that I think we force onto men from quite a young age, really. So yeah, I'm 10 years on now, and I'm in a much, much better place. Obviously, life can still be tough, and I can still have difficult days, but for the most part, I feel at peace with myself. And while I still have dark days, I know where I'm at in it, or why I'm there, and maybe what to do with it. Whereas 10 years ago, I was just fighting against myself. I was just hiding it. I wasn't talking about it. I was rejecting it. I was fighting against myself, and that just got me worse and worse. So I think that a big reason that I'm in a better place today is because I be a man on my terms. I don't do it on anyone else's terms. I think where before I was trying to do it to fit into society's definition of being a man, I now do it on my terms. And I have to be ruthless with that. I think we have to be ruthless with that, because unfortunately society will still, in some pockets of society, you will still get punished as a man for stepping out of that predetermined gender role and showing vulnerability. And I think things like social media and the internet can punish a man for doing that as well. It's not everywhere, but it does still exist. So I think we do have to be ruthless with it, and I am ruthless with it, because I know that when I do anything other than be the man that I am, or the man that I want to be, it could potentially lead me down a pretty dark road, really. So that's where I'm at now, and that's what I've learned. And I think it has been a journey, and it will probably be a lifelong journey. I'm sure I've got plenty of stuff still to learn, but I think when I do stuff like this, when I do podcasts or interviews, I think people want to know, okay, sounds good, like it's taken a while, how can other men start to do this? How can we start to build a healthier idea of masculinity in other people? And I think the first thing to say with this is that this stuff takes time and it takes patience. I don't expect people to listen to this call today and come off and they've completely changed the way they see themselves. I think we're talking here about potentially undoing and working back decades of conditioned learning and beliefs. So this isn't as simple as just snapping our fingers. And I think that it's really important to say that everyone's blueprint looks different. My version of being a man is different to someone else's. So I don't believe in kind of forcing people to live a certain way. And we definitely need changes in boardrooms and classrooms and governmental offices. We need big systemic changes, which I do think is coming. The UK government announced the first men's health report today, which is obviously wicked news. But I think, we don't have to just leave it to that. We don't have to leave it to the big policy changes. I do think there are things that we can start doing immediately today, which, while not necessarily always easy or a quick fix, it can sort of at least start to help us redefine our relationship with masculinity. So I think the first thing I always say to people is to really ask yourself questions about where your beliefs around masculinity come from. Don't do it with shame or judgment. Just take the role of like a healthy observer in your life. Like, for example, if you believe that a man should never open up, never show vulnerability, or if another man tells you that, just ask why. Where has that belief come from? It's everyone's entitled to their belief. So I think don't do it in a critical way, but just ask why. Has that belief come from ironclad scientific proof, or has it actually come from lessons from parents, teachers, films, from people or places that have learnt that lesson from somewhere else, which itself could be built on faulty logic? I think when we start to actually question where our beliefs have actually come from around this stuff, it can make them fall apart quite quickly. We can see that they might be built on shaky ground. I think there's no predetermined fact that men don't have emotions and shouldn't talk about them. That's a culturally created belief. Humans have made it, so we can unmake it. So yeah, I would say take the role of a healthy observer in your life. Kind of be like that annoying kid that's just asking why to everything. And I think when it comes to masculinity, often you'll find that you're dealing with opinions that have been created at a point in time by a certain group of people, rather than a long-lasting historic scientific fact. Sounds obvious, but I don't think we often critically examine these things. I think particularly with men, we just say that's the way men are and that's the way it's always been, and we just kind of let it going, let it keep going as it is. Secondly, as I touched on earlier, we can learn to stop labeling emotions as good or bad. I think that we obviously want to experience nicer emotions. Things like happiness and joy, they feel nicer and we would rather experience them. And things like grief or sadness, they can feel distressing. We obviously don't want to feel them, but neither is good or bad. And every emotion has its place, and they are human specific things. They are not gender specific things, and men have a right to feel them. So we can start to learn that whatever we are feeling, it's okay to feel that way. It's valid, it's natural, it's normal, and it's our body's way of telling us something. And each emotion has a role and it has a meaning. I think, for example, my nan passed away last year, which obviously was devastating. And I was sad, I was grieving, I felt shit, to be honest. And the traditional masculine code would have told me to reject that experience. It would have told me to not talk about it, not even acknowledge it. But I cried and I grieved because I loved my nan. My grief was there because of how much she meant to me. So in a kind of perverse sort of way, my grief really was sort of an act of love. And if I had suppressed that emotion, then not only would I have been suppressing that experience, but I essentially would have been suppressing the meaning that my nan had held in my life, which I think when you really paint it like that, it doesn't make any sense. So whatever the emotion is, it's there for a reason, it's valid, and we're allowed to feel it. And I think the final thing, which I feel really, really passionate about, is that, and this is something that we can do immediately, although it's hard, it can feel hard, is building stronger bonds with our mates. I think another part of the traditional masculine code is independence, but what that has sadly meant in some ways is that it's come with a sort of resistance to strong interpersonal connections with other people, but particularly men. And then we've also got this horrible kind of cultural habit we've got into where we've weaponized sexuality, where being gay is used as a homophobic slur to men. So many men do whatever they can to lean away from behaviors which might see them labeled with this, which sadly means that men are keeping huge distance between other men, like in their relationships. Conversations often say surface level, there's little to no platonic affection between male friends. And yet at the same time, there's this silent male loneliness epidemic brewing that isn't really spoken about enough. But depending on where you look, stats will show that in the UK, up to like 25% of men report having no close friends, which is just, it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. And it's tragic that, we're in a world that is more connected than ever, and yet we seem to be more lonely than ever, particularly men. So we need to break this cycle. Someone has to break it. Someone has to break it in their friendship group. So, please tell a mate you love him. That's something that we started doing in our group. We literally say, I love you, bro. Ask a mate what's going on for him, check in on him, schedule more regular catch-ups, share what's going on for you. I think we can role model healthier connection by sharing what's actually happening with us. Reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in years, or join a local group or community, find a new network. We can obviously still have the kind of banter and the talk about sport, and all that stuff is fine. A lot of men really, really enjoy that stuff. So again, it's not about shaming that side. We can still do all of that, but we need to be able to go deeper as well, and form deeper bonds with those around us, particularly other men, because our bodies are literally wired for this sort of deeper human connection. So that's kind of a short, like I said, it's not easy to do this stuff, and it's not quick, but there's a short, small sort of blueprint there. It's complex stuff. This is sensitive stuff. It's not going to happen overnight, but I really, really do believe that this is one of the most important conversations of our time. I'm obviously going to say that, I'm going to be biased towards that in the work I do, but I think what's happening to men is impacting everyone. It's impacting men, it's impacting women, families, workplaces, children. So I really, really do believe this is one of the most important conversations of our time. It's not about only making things about men. We must continue to give support and a platform to other groups, to women, to feminism. But this is a conversation that needs to happen. And that's why I'm really, really glad that we're doing this today and here today. Because, I think it's not it's not a reach to say that the future of our boys and men literally depend on conversations like this. So look, thank you so much. That's everything from me. I think we maybe got a little bit of time left over. I'm happy to do questions now about anything if that's the way we want to do it, or save it for the panel at the end. But just thank you so much, and thank you to everyone that's come here today, and taking the time to learn about this, because it is a difficult topic, but people coming here today is really the first step in us helping to change things. So thank you from me.
Thank you so much, George. That was great. We really appreciate the insight, but also opening up that way. It's brave and it's important, and that was great. Just a couple of comments, and similar to what we spoke about in our last conversation. Maybe highlighting some points, because there was a lot there. Redefining things. I think you said making your box bigger, also, which is interesting. Maybe a moment about that. Maybe a little reminder. What did you mean about expanding your box?
We are basically given a box when we are born. Like, from a very young age, we're given a box, by society, culturally, whatever it is, and that box is labeled man or it's labeled woman, and you're just given that box, and then within that you're expected to fit into your sort of predetermined gender role. There's a whole bunch of stuff to this that impacts obviously men and women, but these boxes are very, very narrow, and I think as we grow up, the box becomes tight. We get big, but the box doesn't change, and we see the impact that these predetermined gender roles have on men and women in homes, in the workplace, in suicide statistics, all that kind of stuff. So I think that for me, it's about realizing that actually what we're dealing with here is not two separate, distinct boxes where you either fit into A or B. We're just dealing with like human stuff. Emotions, for example, that is a human trait. Expressing emotions, that is a human thing. It's not a masculine thing or a feminine thing. It's a human trait. And actually, the more we can expand our boxes and try and, I think, break down these really tall barriers that we create around what a man should do or what a woman should do, and just realize that it's what a human should do, I think the happier and healthier we can be, really.
Well said. Well said, my friend. All right, I'll say it. I love you too. There you go.
That's the role modeling right there. I love you back, man. I love everyone here. We're changing it right now.
All right. I'm not afraid. Not afraid to say it. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll have a chat at the end. And if there's no specific questions for George, we'll move on to our next speaker, which is Dan. Thanks again, George.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, Dan. Tough act to follow.
Yeah, isn't it?
Right?
Wow. Wow, that was so powerful. And let me start by saying I love you, George. And thanks, mate, for sharing your story. That strength, what George has just demonstrated to us there, that's courage, that's bravery, not ignoring how we feel and pushing on and repressing and suppressing our emotions. That's not strength or courage. That's daft. But that's what we all do, right? So today is called Inside the Male Identity Crisis, right? Identity. Now, my business, my men's community, is called Positive Masculinity. And for me, positive masculinity is know yourself, be yourself, love yourself. Now, just like George, I got stuck in the man box. So I've had a really charmed life, actually. I used to work for the BBC. I worked in sports broadcasting, which, as you can imagine, was a really fun job. I got to watch sport and get paid for a living. I got to work on Match of the Day, a programme since I've been watching since I was a kid. Wimbledon, Six Nations, you name it. I got to do it. I was a TV producer and director. Now, the trouble was, my relationship with my job became like a toxic relationship. So on the outside, my life looked great. I drove around in a brand new motor. I lived in a lovely house. Imagine what it was like at dinner parties, telling people, I know Gary Lineker. I work for BBC Sport. The inside did not match the outside. Inside, I was crumbling. So I had a really bad mindset. I was a people pleaser. I had no boundaries because I thought that was how to get ahead. I'd completely confused resilience and endurance. So, like George, in the man box, emotions, feelings, they're no good to me. They're fluffy thinking. It's all about logic and reason, right? And being up here and thinking, think. That's clever. So I repressed all my emotions. I buried my feelings. I built up walls because I didn't think they were any good to me. Now, of course, when that happens, not only do you not feel the things you don't like to feel, you don't feel any of the good stuff either. So no joy, no happiness. And so when I look back now, I think I probably suffered with chronic stress and anxiety for about 5 years, maybe longer, and bouts of depression. Now, George said that because he was in the man box, he didn't feel he could ask for help. I didn't even admit to myself anything was wrong. I wore it like a badge of honor. Yeah, that's right. Here I am, working on BBC's flagship football show, having had 2 hours sleep and a skinful of booze the night before. Aren't I tough? But of course, that isn't sustainable. And the more I did that, the less energy I had, the less I showed up in my relationships. I prioritized my work and my career over everything. Provide. It's in us, isn't it, fellas? It's a masculine drive. It's innate. But what does provide mean? Run yourself into the floor to earn a few quids, push yourself to breaking point for status and hierarchy so you can sit at dinner parties and tell people your best mates with Ian Wright? That's not it, is it? So there I was in the man box, completely ignoring how I felt. And so what did I do? I turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms because I wanted to feel something, right? So I drink, gambling, risk-taking, drugs, partying, you name it, junk food, anything unhealthy, porn that I could lay my hands on, I used. And some of it I got very addicted to. I'm still addicted to nicotine. This is something I'm still working to overcome. Now, what happened to me, fortunately, I never got to the place where George got. I never got to suicidal ideation, but I know, and I've worked with plenty of men that have. I had a massive panic attack one day. I was sat on my doorstep. I thought I was going to die. I couldn't breathe. My heart I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. And I thought to myself, right, I can't have my wife or my son come and find me dead on the doorstep here. So I've taken a couple of deep breaths, get my phone, ring an ambulance. Took the deep breaths. Suddenly I was calm. I realized I wasn't going to die. So I went off and Googled what had happened to me. Oh, anxiety. So then Googled some more. So that's exactly what I'm feeling. That sense of dread, constant sense of dread, that feeling in my solar plexus of nervousness, that chronic stress. Now, where did that come from? Just like George said, it came because I was in the man box. And what did that man box do to me? It meant I was not being who I am. I'd created a persona. In fact, I created several personas. I had a home one, I had a work one. And none of them were me. Now, there is a reason why we fail lie detector tests, because lie detectors pick up on the stress response. So when we are in the man box, this very narrow idea of what masculinity is, we're not being ourselves, we're lying to ourselves, and we're lying to everybody else, which causes chronic stress. Now, when we're chronically stressed, we are constantly enacting our sympathetic nervous system. That's fight or flight mode, right? That's our wiring. It's what keeps us alive. It's what tells our bodies we're in imminent danger. Now, that, when you look at humanity's evolution, modern humanity's tiny. It's a blink of an eye. So we're actually wired for the Stone Age. So that wiring is to stop us getting eaten by cats and bears. We don't get eaten by cats and bears anymore. But now fight or flight comes in because we're lying, because we're pretending to be somebody we're not. And we get triggered by conversations with our boss, by things we don't like and we don't want. And then when that kicks in, we literally cannot think straight. So we make stupid decisions. We say stupid things because the blood leaves our prefrontal cortex, the bit that makes us human, the bit that makes us calm and reasonable. And it goes to our muscles and our senses because we're ready for a fight or flight, or to run away or to hide or to freeze. And most of us, and especially men, when we're constantly lying to ourselves and everybody else and hiding behind that, I'm fine, like George said, that's the one emotion we're allowed. Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. We're not fine. None of us is fine. We've all got something going on, haven't we? We're all dealing with something. But we're lying to ourselves. We create this false bravado because we're obsessed as men with hierarchy and status. And boy, can we not show weakness. I can't tell people I'm crumbling inside. I can't tell people I can't make it into work today because of my mental health. So what I'm all about now is building mental strength and mental fitness, understanding that resilience is not just pushing through all the time, taking everything on by ourselves, that independence thing that George mentioned, right? Oh, I've got broad shoulders. I can take it. I can deal with it. No, we're social animals. We're meant to be in communities, in tribes. We are meant to connect deeply and intimately with each other. And as men, we don't do that. Precisely again for the reasons that George touched on, because it's a bit gay, isn't it? Oh no, we can't be seen to be that because that's weak. That's going to reduce my status in the eyes of other men, my hierarchy. And we become obsessed with what other people think about us, especially other men. And when we do that, we start to perform. Again, we're not being ourselves. And we learn not to trust ourselves. We lose touch with our inner guidance, with knowing what's right to do. And instead of trusting our inner guidance to lead us to do what's right, we do what we think's acceptable to other people. We people please, like I did. And we run ourselves into the floor doing it. Now, something else that I've really noticed about men and the men that I work with, and particularly when they first appear in my world, it's what I call the I'll be all right when fallacy. So when we understand we're stressed, we're anxious, we're overwhelmed, we're overloaded, we've got too much, I haven't got time. But I'll be all right when. I'll be all right when I retire. I'll be all right when I get back from holiday. I'll be all right when the kids leave home. I'll be all right when things calm down. Well, let me tell you, things never calm down. It's up to us to take command of this, to take control. Now, remember at the start what I said about positive masculinity. Know yourself, be yourself, love yourself. Now, I've come up with a 3-step process that can help you do that. It's called my power shift method. It's a method that I use in my one-on-one coaching, in my community, and in my mastermind and my group work. And it's 3 steps, right? Prioritize, optimize, execute. prioritize. What do I really value? What do I care about? And most importantly, why do I care about it? Not what I've been told to value, not what makes me more of a man in the eyes of other people, what genuinely lights me up. You know what it is, right? Look back to when you were 7 years old, before the world got its hands on you and you got trapped in the man box. What lit you up? What did you like doing? Now, when I was a youngster, I liked to perform. But I learned very quickly, I can't dance and perform in front of people. Oh, that's a bit gay. Trapped in the man box, right? So connection lost with what I really valued, what I really cared about. I'm a very sensitive person. I've been told all my life, you're too sensitive. So I built this false bravado, didn't I, to avoid it? But that wasn't who I really was. So what do you really care about? What do you value? Most importantly, why? And what's the vision for your life? What's the legacy you want to leave? What sort of role model do you want to be to your children? Then when you understand that vision, those values, you can start to prioritize them in your life. You can make time for them. Don't fall for the I'll be all right when fallacy. The only time is now. We always have time to do the things we want to do, but actually we're busy stuck in the man box trying to provide, aren't we? Provide in the old-fashioned sense. Actually, it's better to provide yourself, your time, your presence, your attention for other people. And you can do that by filling up your cup, by prioritizing the things you value. Now, optimize. Here's the important one. Now, George said to us, didn't he? Question your beliefs. So we have an unconscious belief system that we've been programming all our lives, and most of us do that unconsciously. Most of it goes in as we're kids, right? Views, opinions, and beliefs that we never question because we don't know any better. So it comes from our education, our upbringing, from the example we're set, from our religion, from what we read, what we see, what we hear, from the people we care about. Now, we carry this stuff around. A lot of it is conflicted. A lot of it is incredibly disempowering. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. There's something wrong with me. So when we're busy trying to prioritize our well-being, we can't until we turn our attention inward. This is why it's called the power shift method. It's about shifting your attention and your intention inward, because that's where your power lies. So optimize is shine the light of awareness on your belief system. Start questioning it. Start programming it deliberately in order that it fits with your vision and your values. This is what it's all about, being yourself, knowing yourself, right? And when you start to do that, you will start to feel joy, happiness, purpose. Even the smallest and most mundane things that you do will start to feel meaningful because you know why you're doing them. You're not doing them because you think you should and you have to and you must and you ought to. You're not doing them to perform. You're not doing them because you're concerned about what other men think of you in your hierarchy and status. You're doing them because they light you up. So optimize that belief system so it doesn't get in your way, so you don't self-sabotage, so you don't trip yourself up. Heal your psychological and your emotional wounds so that you can move towards that vision, so you can prioritize what you value, so you can do the things you love with the people you love. The third step, execute. And this is probably the most important of all. Taking deliberate action. We can literally rewire our own brains. Thanks to modern neuroscience, we now know what neuroplasticity is. And it means our mindset is not fixed. It's not who we are. It can be changed. And we change it via repetition. By doing the things we love that light us up and doing them repeatedly. By repeatedly demonstrating to ourselves the new set of beliefs we've created, the empowering set, that I'm a good man with good intentions. I'm capable of anything I want to do. Now, that's a simple three-step process. It's not an easy process, right? And what I know is, I call myself a peak performance coach because I know men respond well to peak performance. I talk about mental strength, fitness, emotional intelligence. But what am I really talking about? I'm really talking about mental health. Because what was my big problem? My mental health was shot to pieces. Absolutely. I was mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted. I literally couldn't carry on. I had nothing left to give. Now, there's a reason, right, that when you get on an airplane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first, because you're no good to anybody else if you haven't got oxygen. You're going to die. You can't help anyone else. Now, as men, fitting in this man box, being the provider and the protector, we're busy being all things to all people. What about ourselves? Who are we? What do we want from our lives? What gives us energy? What are the actions? What are the hobbies? What are the things we like to do that give us energy? Now, my 3-step process. Now, how can you do this? How can you start to implement it? How can you start to find out who you are, what you're about, and what you really care about? By how you feel. It's so important, guys, right? Most of us have spent our whole lives ignoring how we feel. Now, often the men I work with, they can't tell me how they feel, because as boys, we were not taught how to talk about our feelings and emotions. We literally do not have the language. So that's a really good first step. Go and learn about feelings and emotions. So emotion, right? The word emotion, energy, emotion. Emotions, as George said really eloquently, have a message for us. They're not bad or good. They're drawing our attention to something. They're like the dashboard, the lights on the dashboard of your car. It's a warning sign. Emotion, energy, emotion. So they're supposed to flow through you. Now, what you resist persists. So what we call bad, if you're pushing that away and burying it, it doesn't go anywhere. It festers. It gets worse. So learn the language so you can describe how you feel, so you understand your emotions. Stop labeling them as good or bad and allow them to come. And most importantly, fellas, allow them to go. Now, the other important thing, right? I talked about the fight or flight and that stress response, and how in the modern world, our bodies think we're in imminent danger when we're not. The things that trigger us. Start understanding what triggers you. What makes you angry? Why? Is there a belief in there that actually doesn't serve you? If there is, change it. You know, your views, opinions, and beliefs, they form the lens through which you see the world. They are your perspective. If you don't like the world, change the fucking lens. Rewire your brain. Rewire your mind. You can do it. So, step 1, get to know yourself. Get to be able to express your feelings and your emotions and start understanding what they mean. Then, get to learn the techniques through which you can bring yourself back to calm, so you're not in constant fight or flight, because that is exhausting. We all need a bit more peace, don't we, and tranquility and calm in our lives. Now, fellas, this is not going to take away your edge. Pressure and stress are not what drives you. I know that's what we believe. I know that's what the culture teaches us. That's what I believed. I used to literally say it in job interviews. I thrive under pressure. Nobody thrives under pressure. Pressure is the biggest performance killer. As an expert in peak performance, let me tell you, elite athletes, actors, the top 1%, they spend their time removing pressure so they can be themselves, so they can take bold action, so they can do the things they want to do, right? So we need to learn to regulate. Now, we have some tools that we take everywhere with us that we can do this with. Our breath for a kickoff. 3 deep breaths into your belly will immediately reset your nervous system and bring you back to calm. So when you're at work, when you start to feel the signs of stress, and it be how you feel, it might be tightness in the chest, tightness in the throat. Mine is my shoulders steadily rise and my jaw gets a bit more clenched. And now when I see that happening, I stop, I pause, I take 3 deep breaths, I let my shoulders drop. And then I can think clearly. I can respond from a place of calm clarity instead of react. Because when we react, what happens then is our mind and our brain want to be efficient, and they just start applying the past to the present moment. So we're missing what's genuinely happening in front of us. We're not really understanding what's going on. We're applying a past experience onto the present moment. So that's how we lose our temper. That's why we fall out with people. That's why we shout at the kids, because we're in fight or flight. We're stressed and we're reacting. So we want to be responsive, right? We want to be responsibility. What responsibility means is our ability to respond. So if we can train ourselves to use our breath to calm our nervous system, we can respond. We can choose a response. Because one of the things that passed me by for most of my life is I always have choice. And mainly more choice in any given moment than I realize is available to me. But the calmer I am, the more present I am, the more choice I see that I have. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to prioritize rest and recuperation. We need to have strong boundaries. Now, boundaries aren't just what you get on a cricket and a rugby pitch, chaps, right? Boundaries are your way of demonstrating what you will tolerate and how you wish to be treated. Now, when I was at work, in my former career, I had no boundaries. I said yes to everything. Dan, can you work overtime Saturday? Yes. Dan, can you do an extra shift Sunday? Yes. That came first because I thought that's how I was going to get ahead. But actually, what happened was after my panic attack, when I started rebuilding my life, when I started to value myself, prioritize myself, my relationships, the things that light me up, I started to say no. My value went up. Suddenly, I got opportunities I chased for years and always just missed out. I got promoted twice, so I got to lead teams. I got to mentor people. I earned more money than I ever had before because I valued me. I wasn't sacrificing myself for a few quid and for a perceived status. So that's what we need to do, fellas, right? Strong boundaries. Protect them like your life depends on it because it does. Schedule in rest. Even if it's just 5-minute, 10-minute times during the day to reset the nervous system, to bring yourself back to calm clarity. Walk outside, take a deep breath. Now, the other thing, and George mentioned this, and it is crucial, guys, we need intimate relationships with other men. And that intimate does not mean sexual. It means relationships where we can be open and honest and real and raw and talk about what's going on for us. Because we've all got something going on, and the I'm fine is pretending. It's false. It's bravado. It isn't true, right? Let's get honest with ourselves, honest with the men around us, so we can all feel seen and heard. So we don't, like George said there, and like I felt when I was going through my anxiety, we don't feel like we're on our own. We don't feel like it's just us, because this is the problem, right? This is the epidemic. This is the loneliness. Men feel like it's just them because there aren't any other men putting their hands up and say, yes, this is what I've been through and this is what I go through. And this is why it's so important that we share in the way we're doing today, right? So go and find where these places exist because they do. Now, it's all very well, we tell men, oh, you should talk more, open up more. We all know, we've all been there where we've talked and we've opened up and we've been ridiculed. We've been put away. It's been weaponized against us. So you've got to find the right time to do it, the right place and the right people. You've got to be among people you can trust. Now, there's some great places at Andy's Man Club, men's sheds in the UK. They're really good communities. And the important thing that these communities and these places do is they get men into action. They get men to take control because this is what we want. They get men to stand shoulder to shoulder because this is how we connect, shoulder to shoulder, not necessarily face to face. Brotherhood, right? I run an online community. So if you want to find out more about that, you can get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. But there are plenty of these places around. Now, fellas, there are things you can do. And step one is to admit to yourself, first of all, to be honest, this isn't right, because it doesn't have to be this way.
All right. Was that it?
Yes, Jason, it is.
More than enough. It was great.
Thank you.
Take a sip of water. You deserve it. That was a lot there. Thanks for that. Yeah, I can imagine your coaching sessions must bring a lot to people and really help people reframe things.
Yeah, and what it's mainly about, right? And what I do in my coaching is I hold the mirror up, Jason, right? This is what I do. I listen to men actively not to respond, but to understand, and not so I can understand them, so they can understand themselves. Because this is where we get lost when we get trapped in the man box. We don't understand ourselves, and we don't think we're allowed to be ourselves, and we are. And men and masculinity comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and it's all good. It's all okay. We need it all. You know, humanity's like a jigsaw puzzle. We all have our unique gifts and talents, and we all are our piece of the puzzle. When we're busy stuck in the man box, when we're busy being someone we're not, when we're busy following society's rules and that route to success, you know, sacrifice ourselves, provide at all costs, that's when we lose who we are, right? And that's why humanity has a problem, because we're not using our unique gifts and talents. We all have something to bring to the table. Whatever type of man we are, it is okay.
I like it.
Absolutely. We also have a hand raised in the audience, so I will invite Claudia now to join us. I hope he accepts.
That's interesting. The hand raised, I'll give a plot twist for our event. That raised hand is my father.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Right? Although he's a bit older, it's possible he pressed it by accident. Technology. Yeah, I mean, he's welcome. He's welcome to ask a question now, or I let him know that we could also speak at the end. So,
well, yes. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he's coming on stage right now, but
okay.
All right.
I think my brothers and sisters are having a laugh. Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, we could save them at the end. And if you want to come have a chat later, you can join the sharing circle.
Yeah, come join us, Dad. And Dad, Jason loves you.
I do. Thanks for that. All right. Okay, thanks a lot, Dan. Tanya, are we ready to move on?
Yes, I think we also wanted to encourage our audience to take a mental health assessment.
Yes, States of Mind has our in-house diagnostics and mental health assessments. And there it is at the bottom of the screen. Links. States of Mind has lots of resources for your mental health journey. So please check us out. We're a lot more than just an event. We're a hub for all your mental health explorations.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Dan has mentioned just now, it's just so important to name things. That is where it starts from. So like just naming it. I'm feeling anxious. What does anxious mean? How does that look for me? So we are really, really passionate about giving you the tools and the vocabulary really to talk about your mental state. And this is a very, very simple tool that can help and that can go a very long way. It's just 3 minutes, but you will answer some questions that can be life-saving, really.
Yeah, it'd be great self-awareness, that, Tanya, you know, especially for us blokes. It's really good to be able to, you know, as I said, when I was going through stuff, I had no idea. I just thought it was normal. I thought, right, this is the stress and strains of being in a high-powered career in a competitive environment. It's not normal to feel that way. Take that test, guys. See where you're at, and then you'll know what steps you need to take, what the way forward is.
Thank you. This is such an important message. And just thank you for your talk. That was amazing, really. Well, okay, let's continue from here then.
Let's go on.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Next up is Christian. Here we go.
Hey, guys.
All right, Christian, you ready to rock?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, the stage is yours, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, there's been so many amazing things that George and Dan have both mentioned there. Lots of those points actually show up a lot in my work as well. So as I mentioned, I've been working as a psychotherapist, counselor, and then also as a facilitator of men's spaces for the last 5 years now. So I work with guys one-to-one, I work with them in groups, and I work with them on retreats. And one of the things that I see a lot of the guys that come in and see me for one-to-one therapy, usually within the first session, it becomes really evident for a lot of guys, you don't need therapy, you need a friend. And I think that's what so many of us are lacking in today's society. This sense of isolation, this sense of aloneness, this sense of not belonging. And what does that look like and what does that feel like? And Dan and George both mentioned what it's like to be out of touch with our emotions. Again, a lot of the guys that I see, they apply logic, they apply reason, they're based in their heads, and their body is not a safe place for them to be. And as men, that's what we've been conditioned with. And that really directly feeds into what is and isn't allowable for us as men to experience, to express, and to feel into. So this whole thing around male emotion, what is it? How do we express it? This buzzwords like vulnerability. It's not safe for men to be vulnerable. You know, vulnerability is seen as a feminine trait. It's seen as a weakness. You know, the language that we're using with men and in society is alienating for so many men, and it shouldn't be. You know, one of the guys before mentioned these are not gender traits. You know, we all have access, regardless if we're men, if we're women, if we're trans, if we're intersex. It's not about that type of identity. We have access to a full spectrum of our emotions. And just like Dan was mentioning before, every single emotion that we have is there for a reason. And it's trying to tell us something about what's going on in the body. But because we're disconnected from our bodies, because we've learned not to trust our intuition, our instinct, our feelings, we don't know how we're operating. We have a lack of connection, a lack of self-regulation, and a lack of co-regulation between each other as well. So in the spaces that I do, when I do group work and I do retreat work, myself, the team of facilitators that I work with, and the attendees that come onto our spaces, we co-create what a space is going to look like. And it's that co-creation that creates a safety. So how we want to interact with each other, what's allowable behavior, what's not allowable behavior, what happens when we make a mistake, what happens when we misinterpret someone, and how do we guide each other back into the parameters of that container that we've co-created and stated, and what are the boundaries of that. So really thinking about what are the responses that we have and how we actually receive each other is something to consider. So let me ask you, when do you feel safe? When do you feel unsafe? How do you know what that feels like? How do you know that you can trust somebody? And we've all had experiences when we've been let down, when we've had a vulnerability used as a weapon against us, when we thought we could trust somebody, but somebody's broken that trust. So we ask men to be vulnerable. We ask men to talk up, or to speak up, I should say. But as a society, how ready are we to receive men's emotions? And I really want you to consider that. As a society, how ready are we to receive men's emotions? Because in groups of men, how do we respond to vulnerability? Do we offer advice? Do we offer a solution? Do we diminish it with banter because we don't know how to hold it? Those are very typical responses that we have as men in groups of men with each other. And one of the things that I share and teach in the spaces that I hold is you don't have to have a response. You don't need to have a solution. You don't need to have an answer. It is enough simply for you to be present, to give your time and your attention, and let somebody know that they are worthy of that time and attention. Because most often, guys aren't looking for a solution. They're simply looking to be seen, to be heard, and to be validated. And giving somebody your presence and your silence is more powerful than you could ever imagine. So just like Dan and George were both saying before, what's it like to go through a crisis, or to recover from a crisis, or to come back from the edge of being suicidal, or considering if you should be here anymore? It doesn't have to get to crisis point, but so many of us do get to crisis point as men. It's why the statistics on suicide are so ridiculously high, because we feel we can't ask for help, we don't know what's available to us, and again, these models of masculinity keep us trapped in what we think is and isn't allowable for us to access. So recognizing what are the services and the support structures that are around. Is it private services like counseling and psychotherapy? Are there charitable services where you can get access to free healthcare? Or is it looking at family, friend, workplaces where they offer certain services that you can access and recognize when you need that help? So another thing that Dan mentioned before was that we are hardwired for community and for tribe. And that is so accurate. I constantly say that to the guys that I come into contact with. We are hardwired for tribe and community. And typically in the early days of civilization, our communities would only have been roughly 150 people strong. And you look at the world today, and George said it before, we're more connected than ever, but how many of us know what our neighbors are doing? How many of us know all the neighbors on our street? And yet within seconds, we can find out what's going on in a different country on the opposite side of the world. And we can be fed all this information from the outside. But what connections do we have that are authentic, that are genuine, and that are meaningful? So really consider some of these concepts here. Who are you? How do you have a defined sense of self? And where are the connections in your life? A lot of the guys that I see, typically between the ages of 35 and 50, really at that midlife point. And it's that midlife point which can be so stressful. I see relationship breakdowns. I see disconnection from children. I see negative coping mechanisms like porn addiction, alcohol, gambling, overwork, over-exercising. And I also see a lack of purpose and a lack of identity. You've got to contend with things like aging parents or children who are growing up and might be leaving the nest. And this has a compounding effect of so many different stressors, essentially going into a boiling pot or a pressure cooker, and eventually they're going to explode. And again, this is a big thing that we have as men, is we compartmentalize everything that's going on for us. So we might be fantastic at firefighting or dealing with high stress situations, compartmentalizing all the other stuff to get through the immediate emergency that's in front of us. But what we don't ever do is go back and look at the stuff we've compartmentalized and deal with that. And just like Dan said before, we are depressing our emotions. We are suppressing our emotions. And just like the analogy of trying to hold a balloon under a bath full of water, that's what we're doing with our emotions. And it takes all of our effort every single day to keep that balloon underneath the water. And just like Dan said, we're meant to feel our emotions. We're meant to express them. But they're meant to move through us. Every single emotion that we have is trying to tell us something. But do we give ourselves permission to feel it? And that's a big one. For me, back in 2019, I was really questioning my purpose in life. I had a really poor sense of self, didn't think I meant anything to anyone in the world. And just like George said, I had an amazing network of people around me, fantastic partner, loving family, phenomenal friendships, but I just had a complete lack of self-worth and I couldn't see it. And I had to go through my own journey to realize that. But recognizing sometimes when we're in a position where we can't self-regulate, we need to co-regulate from somebody else. And just think what it's like when you have a baby who might be colicky or have an upset tummy, or he might have like a tooth that they're cutting. And what do you do with a baby? You hold a baby on your chest, you lean into it, you might put your lips on the forehead, and you rub the baby's back, don't you? You rock your body, you sway, you might make a noise that's soothing to the baby. And what are you doing in that moment? The baby is smelling you, they're feeling your heartbeat, they're feeling the temperature of your body, and they're learning to co-regulate from you. So think about it as you are now as an adult. What happens when you're dysregulated in your own body? You're going to seek some co-regulation from somebody else. But what happens if there's nobody to co-regulate from? Or what happens if the only person you can co-regulate from is somebody who's abusing you? Or you're in a dysfunctional relationship? Or you've got somebody that doesn't really care about you? What happens when you're surrounded by people that don't know how to hold your emotions and don't know how to respond to you? And that is one of the most challenging situations to be in. How do you self-regulate in that moment? What's the answer? Sometimes there isn't one. And that's why we get to crisis point. So it's recognizing what are the environmental factors, whether that's a family, whether it's a work situation, whether it's our wider relationships. What are those factors that are beyond our control, and what are the factors that are within our control? And control is a very fuzzy thing anyway. So little is actually in our control, but what's inside of our sphere of influence, and what are some better decisions that we can make? And again, one of the guys was mentioning it before, the emotions, like we tend to label emotions as positive or negative, and they're neither. But we don't know as a society, not just men, but as a society, we don't know how to sit with discomfort. And we try and move away from discomfort to pleasure-seeking behavior, because discomfort is not pleasant. It doesn't feel good. Therefore, we label it as being negative. Let's take grief, for example. Grief is one of the most human emotions that we can have. A sense of loss, a sense of grief. It's fucking horrendous. Who the fuck wants to feel grief? And yet we need to. I saw a really amazing interview with the actor Andrew Garfield. He was on a talk show and he just lost his mother. And the host welcomes him onto the show, and the host acknowledges that his mother has just died. And he said, "Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that." He said, "I'm probably going to cry at some point in this interview, but for me, my tears are okay, because my grief is an expression of all the uncommunicated love that I still have for my mother that I'm not able to share with her." And I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. Grief is all the uncommunicated love that you still have left for somebody when you lose them. Let that sink in. We're meant to feel grief. We're meant to feel sadness. We're not meant to be happy all the time. We're not meant to be successful all the time. We're meant to feel failure. We're meant to feel loss. These are all completely natural states of being a human being. And just look at the seasons. We've got spring, summer, autumn, winter. Yet how many of us intellectualize that we are the primate, the apex predator on the planet? As humans, we're the most intellectual, we're the most intelligent, we're the most conquering of all the species on the planet. And yet we don't recognize that we're a part of nature. We have seasons and cycles that we go through. In winter, we're meant to hibernate. We're meant to eat root vegetables. We're meant to have more sleep. In the summertime, we're meant to eat things like fruits. We're meant to have less food, calorie intake, because of the warmer weather, regardless of what's happening in the environment at the moment. But it's recognizing that we are meant to move through cycles of feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling energized, feeling less energized, feeling depressed. And that's all completely natural. And learning how to move through those different states, to be okay with feeling discomfort, with this feeling dysregulated, that's where that healing is going to come from. And it's all completely natural. And one of the biggest things that I have guys and girls say to me is that normal? Am I normal? I don't feel normal. And to every single person I say, yeah, that's normal. You are normal. You're meant to feel that. Of course you feel that. Why wouldn't you feel anger about that? Why wouldn't you feel grief around that? Why wouldn't you feel a lack of disrespect around that? It's an appropriate emotion to an appropriate situation that you're dealing with, but recognizing how is that emotion showing up. It's okay for you to feel anger, but it's not okay for you to lash out and hit somebody. So recognizing what is the expression of that emotion, and is it coming out in a healthy way? Is it coming out in a dysregulated way? And is it coming out in a way that's harming you and other people? And then looking at your environment. How are people able to receive that emotion? And that's the really big one. So recognizing what is in your capacity and what isn't in your capacity, and recognizing at different times you'll feel more resourced, and at other times you won't feel resourced. So really thinking about what are practical tools here. I'd say have a look at creating a dopamine map. And what do I mean by that? What are all the ways in your life that you try and get dopamine? Is it through exercise? Is it through porn? Is it through food? Is it through gambling? Is it through a healthy relationship? Have a look at creating a dopamine map for yourself, and look at all the positive and all the negative ways that you try and feel happy, or that you try and feel a sense of accomplishment or achievement, and evaluate that. Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Is it something that's just become habitualized, like having a glass of wine after work every day because you feel stressful? And that's what allows you to feel a sense of relaxation. And what's it like if you're going to replace that glass of wine with a 20-minute walk instead? And some people might not be able to do that because they're disabled, but it's just one example. What are different ways that you can make some slightly different choices in your life, and how are they going to support you in a more healthy, better way? So I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I just want to circle back to the beginning of what I was saying there, just around community and tribe. Again, we are hardwired for community and tribe, and that sense of brotherhood and masculinity. And certainly since the pandemic, there's a lot of judgments on what a man should be. You know, we hear this term thrown around of toxic masculinity and positive masculinity, and men being vulnerable and men speaking up. And so many of these words are going to be alienating, and so many of them have the best of intentions. But it's recognizing what is the language that you need to hear, what's the language that you need to speak to yourself, and what's the language that you need to speak to others. If it's a friend, if it's a brother, if it's a father, if it's a son, what's their frame of reference that they're going to be able to hear you when you're speaking to them? So for most men, they might not be able to hear the word vulnerability. Oh, mate, just be vulnerable, open up. And they're thinking, why the hell would I want to do that? Instead, what might it be like to say, mate, can we be real with each other? I'm worried about you. And I want you to know that I love you. I'm here for you. And if you ever want to talk, I'll listen. I might not have the answers. I might not know what to do, but just know that you're not alone. And that is such a different shift in the language, and that language may land and allow that person to open up. So consider, if you're a man yourself, what do you need and what can you do for yourself? If you're on this call because there are people in your life that you care about and you don't know what to do, recognize that simply showing up, you don't have to have the answers, you don't have to have solutions, but just saying to somebody, I'm here for you, what do you need? And they say, no, I'm fine. It's like, I know you're fine, but what do you need? Because I can feel that something's going on, and you don't have to share it for me. You don't have to share it with me, but you are free to make a request of me. What can I do to help you? And asking it 2 or 3 times will show that you actually care. It will show that people mean it. So I'm just conscious of the time, and I know that we've got a hard finish at past. So I just want to open it up to Jason, if there's anything there or any questions. Just what's it like to ask for help? It's one of the hardest things that we can do. And just thinking about a short story, some of you guys might have heard of it, some of you might not. There's an absolutely phenomenal story that I recommend everyone reads or watches on YouTube, and it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it's one of the most beautiful animations that you can watch. And it just talks about the human experience. What's it like to feel lost? What's it like not to have the answers? And what's it like for us as men, to be women, to be anyone at any stage on our journey through life, to realize that we're not coping, and what does it mean to ask for help? And as Dan and George were both saying before, so many of us are out of contact with our bodies and with our emotions and to feel what's going on. By God, watch that. And sure as hell, that will get some emotion moving in you. I absolutely bloody guarantee it.
What was the name again?
It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it's a phenomenal animation. Type it into YouTube and it'll come up.
It really, really, really is. I love it. It's one of the best things I've seen ever, I think. Thank you so much for your talk, Christian. This was brilliant. It was so beautiful, and just such important emphasis on just how crucial that is, how current the problem is, and how such small things can really help. So you've just shared this beautiful animation with us, and now we have an open stage. Now we'd like to invite everyone joining us here to come and to share really anything at all. Share your experience, share something that you found inspiring in one of the talks, share something that you're going through or something that resonates with you, and something that is helping you navigate this space, this male mental health space. We'd really love any inputs from the audience, and to make sure we recognize how difficult it is to speak up and to be there in front of the audience. We'd love to remind you that we have the partner gift from Go Microdose, so that's a full package worth six truffles, enough for 2 weeks. So if that's something you've been curious about, that is a brilliant option to try. So we'd love to really encourage you to raise hands. If you're more comfortable sharing in the chat, please share in the chat and I will voice that. Otherwise, you don't have to have your camera on. Please feel free to just speak up in a voice memo. And yes, we really hope to hear from everybody in the audience today.
Yeah, feel free to jump in. Safe space, friends.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and in the meantime, I don't know, Tanya, if you had any questions for our speakers, or if speakers had questions for each other.
There's a great
open space
there from Peter Wright, actually.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Yes, that's really interesting.
Yes, so I can read that. Having been to men's groups, I'm concerned about the lack of a middle ground. A talking circle, talking stick model, may not offer us the tools for further growth, and the other option is a mental health psychotherapeutic medical intervention. Learning or understanding adverse childhood experience and its impact developing physical self-regulation, assertiveness, and models and concept of personal growth, counts, all practical skills, not therapy, in a group setting seem absent. So yeah, that's a big comment right there. I absolutely agree with that. As a psychotherapist, I think that could absolutely be beneficial. Guys on the panel, do you have any takes?
Yeah, and Christian definitely will, right? But
Oh,
from my point of view, Peter's absolutely right, because surface level is not going to change anything. Yeah, it's good to express ourselves. It's good to understand where we're at and what's going on for us, and to sit in a circle with people and talk about that. But one of the things I mentioned, right, is for me, I'm a peak performance coach. Peak performance is well-being. In order to prioritize our well-being, we need to heal. We all carry emotional and psychological baggage. I'm not just talking about capital T trauma, neglect and abuse, so there's plenty of us that have suffered that. But most of us have been traumatized in one way, shape or form throughout our life. And as men, as Christian was saying, we have a way of dealing with things, which is compartmentalizing, right? We internalize. But these things need to see the light of day. They need to come back out. They need us to shine the light of awareness on them. And yeah, there's a great point that Peter makes. We need to seek out places that are going to help us go deep, to unlock our next level, to really look beneath the surface, to see what's going on and to see what needs healing. Talking is great, but we need some action, right?
Yeah, 100%. If I can jump on the back of that as well, just really echoing all that Dan has said there, and recognizing the limitations of some of the meetup groups. And again, some of these meetup groups are absolutely fantastic and they're doing phenomenal work, but it's recognizing what are the other meetup groups that are around there. So there's another men's mental health charity called Mentel, so mentell.org.uk, and they do smaller meetup groups online and around the country. And I used to volunteer with that charity. I used to run men's groups for about 3 years with them, and they're a phenomenal service. And they do allow guys to go deeper. So it is still peer-to-peer support of men sharing, but there's a lot of deep sharing that goes on there. And they cap off the size of the groups so that guys have enough time to talk and to go into more depth as well. So it's recognizing what are the different types of men's groups that are out there, what are the parameters for how deep they'll allow you to go, and then what are the signposting services or social prescribers that they might recommend to you for additional support services. So recognizing whether you're seeing a coach or a psychotherapist or a peer-to-peer support group, recognizing the limitations of each of those people, what they are qualified to do, what are they qualified to hold, and recognizing where are you on your journey. Is it that you need a counselor? Is it that you need some coaching? Is it that you need, first of all, to actually go into the trauma or the experience, navigate that for a set period of time, 12 sessions, a year, 2 years, And then when have you been given the time and space to fully explore it, come through the other side of it to then, okay, where can I start implementing change, and what does that change look like, and how is that healthy for me to do in a safe way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how, it's really something that can be done, something that is not just about, sitting down and talking, but something that can really work and really make a lot of difference. I think that's really great, and also how this bonding between men can also be created in the process. I think that's something that's a big part of it potentially. So yes, please, audience, share more. Thank you so much for your take, Peter. That was great. We really agree with that here in the panel. And yeah, any other questions, comments, stories, insights? Would really love to hear from you. Please feel free to share. And before, I also wanted to point out, Carla Zanella said that social pressure leads to your entire identity being a performance, and if it's not you're told you aren't being a man correctly, and I think it's also the point, you're not being a man correctly. Like, how do you even ever be a human correctly or incorrectly? That's just such a wrong turn of phrase, but yet that's something that men really have to face. Do you have any comments on that?
If I may speak up to one point, and it's something around that, but it's more to what the guys were talking about before, is what does touch look like for men? So I work with a lot of men who get their needs of touch fulfilled through sex and through porn. And that's an acceptable way for men to receive touch. But what happens when men are just looking for a nurturing touch? And what does nurturing touch look like? So one of the things that I do in the men's groups and the retreats that I do is we have a workshop on touch, and we explore you. What types of touch are you looking for? And one of the workshops we ask, when did your father stop touching you? When did your father stop kissing you, hugging you, letting you ride on his shoulders, play fighting with you? And what was it like to have him remove that touch, if it was ever there in the first place? Because I never had that from my real father. I had a complete distinct lack of that. And in today's society, how many men do martial arts or jiu-jitsu or cage fighting or something like that? And how much of that is an expression of dominance or power or masculinity? And how much of it is them getting a level of physical touch from other men that is acceptable? And I've explored this on a podcast with two young guys, Conrad and Rupert, on their podcast called Triangle Theory. And both those young guys do jiu-jitsu. And I posed that question to them, and it absolutely stumps them. And then we went into what was their relationship like with their fathers or their brothers or their families, and what does it mean for them to have touch through a martial art or a discipline which allows them to be physical with other men in an acceptable way. So it's a fascinating thing to think, where do and don't we receive touch as men? What does that look like? What's sexualized and what is non-sexualized touch? And where are we being nurtured through touch in a healthy way, and or in a slightly different way to what we need? Some food for the thought. I really wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
I love that, and it is so important, isn't it? And I mentioned it there, didn't I, about intimacy, right? We equate intimacy with sex, and it isn't. Intimacy is opening up, is being real, is being raw, is being honest, and it's the same thing, isn't it? And we've lost the art, or we struggle as men to have those intimate relationships. I've just begun in my life to hug other men, and as George said, to tell other men that I love them. And it still feels a bit odd to me. There's still something in me that cringes a little bit. But actually, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And there's a guy in my WhatsApp group, whenever he talks to me, he signs up and saying, "I love you, Dan." And it's just amazing if I allow that to land, right, and not equate it with sex. It makes me feel $1 million. For another man to have said to me, "I love you, Dan," is amazing, because I've heard that throughout my life, But my dad certainly has never expressed that words to me. He demonstrates it all the time. So I know that my dad loves me, but he's never said it to me out loud. And I've never said it to him. And actually, I'm going to go away from this call. I'm going to change that. And the next time I talk to him, I'm going to tell him. But, you know, and it's so important to, you know, I think the initial comment you read out, Tanya, was about social pressure, right?
Yeah.
And it is this social pressure that stops us from doing it. It is our concern about our hierarchy and our status and how we're seen by other people. We need to get so comfortable with who we are, so very clear about what really matters to us, that we're not swayed by what other people think, that we're not trying to fit into a box, that we're not trying to make ourselves acceptable to other people. And that way we can have intimate relationships with other men. We can hug each other. We can tell each other we love each other. And it's so important. It's vital for us as humans. We can't just get that from our wives and from our children. We need this from our peers.
Yeah. If I can build on that as well, going back to that idea of like tribe and what was that like? Imagine when we were hunter-gatherers and we used to sit around a fire. We used to have an eldership and a what do you call it, like a rites of passage from going from a boy to a man. And we would have older men speaking with younger boys and younger men and saying, this is what life is. This is what struggle is. This is what heartache is. This is what it means to go out and hunt a lion. You know, we'd have this communication through the generations of men of all different ages communicating all different things to us. And I think really recognizing just the power of what it means to say I love you and to be able to receive the words I love you from other men in your life, but also recognizing something like love languages. So all the men that have never said that I love you, or they've never had somebody say that to them, but recognizing it doesn't necessarily mean that your father, your brother, your grandfather doesn't love you. It might simply be that they had a different love language. So every time that they took you to the park as a kid and kicked a football with you, that was them telling you that they loved you. Every time that they bought you an amazing gift at Christmas, that was them telling you that they love you. Every time that they did an act of service for you, like built you a go-kart, that was them telling you that they love you. But as a child, you couldn't interpret that. You didn't know what that meant. So the power of understanding love languages. What's your love language? What was your parents? What's your grandfather's? What's your mother's? What's your sister's? Recognizing sometimes there's a miscommunication that's going on and we're not even aware of it. And knowing it can give such context to understanding each other better.
Right.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. So as this finalizing message, as this takeaway for both men and women joining us today, the thing to do is just to check in and to say that we love each other. Because it's important and because we all need it. We had some women also joining us, and I think that's also a thing that women can do more and more, to say I love you, to be open, to not hold that as some weird kind of currency, but to give it all the way, and to check in with your men, and to encourage those conversations, to actually ask, what are you feeling? What is happening? What is going on with you at this moment? And to share the states of mind. Strength is when you share it, not when you hold back. Silence is not strength. And I would like to thank our beautiful, beautiful panel today. Thank you so much to the speakers, and thank you so much to the audience too. Thank you so much for your activity in the chat. A special thank Jason's dad. Thank you so much for raising the hand. It's sad that we didn't get to hear you, but it's really, really important to us that you were there with us today. And the Go Microdose present will be going to Peter Wright. Thank you so much for your beautiful take, Peter. And we really will have to think about this men's group with actionable items in them. And I am very, very happy. Thank you so much for celebrating Men's Mental Health Day with us today. And have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Everyone.
Cheers.
Great work. Great work. Important work. We appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Thank
Great
you
to be
so
here with you all.
Yeah,
Nice
powerful conversation.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, folks.
Good.